This is Dr. A again. I'm going to be working my way through this particular tutorial called Getting Started with ASP.NET Web API 2.2. And I'm going to be using Visual Studio 2017, and later on I'll probably do the core one. But for now, I'm just going to do the one that works with IIS, and we'll see how this goes. So our first step here is going to be to create an ASP.NET Web application. So I'm just going to go to New, Projects, and create myself, not a WCF, but we're looking for a web application, and I'm going to do the ASP.NET Web .NET, and true to form, this is going to be the products app that we're going to be doing. And I'm storing this on my own place here. And when I click OK, this should give me the option to choose several different types. And I am going to choose the Web API. I'm going to do empty at this point. And we could use the Web API template. And that uses the ASP.NET MVC to provide API help pages. So I'm using the empty template for now for this tutorial because I want to show the Web API without MVC. In general, you don't need to know ASP.NET MVC to use Web API. I probably will come back and do one with the MVC just because I think that's a valuable thing as well to know. So let's click OK to that, and this is going to go through and create my project for me. And when it gets done, it'll have all of these different pieces in it. Let me pull this down so we can actually see all of them. One of the first things it's going to have, we're going to look at least, is the model. So this is going to be our data. And at this point, I'm just going to add a new model class called product. Okay, there we go. And if you want, you can do the CS, but it would add it anyway. So now we have our new product, and in this product, this is a public class, and I am just going to put some public properties in it, an int, an ID. I'm going to do a get, a set, and a public string name with a getter and a setter. And then we'll have a public string called a category, which has a getter and a setter, of course. And then we have a public decimal. In this case, it's going to be price with the get and the setter. Now, now that we have this very simple kind of data, or model, if you will, now it will be time for us to go in and add a controller. And in this case, we're going to go in a Web API. A controller is just an object that handles HTTP requests. We'll add a controller that can return either a list of products or a single product specified by an ID. So very different from the way we did this in WCF. This is going to be a multi-purpose controller, if you will. So if you've used the ASP.NET MVC, you're already familiar with controllers. This Web API controller is similar to MVC, but we're going to inherit the API controller class instead of the controller class. And so we're going to right-click on controllers. And in this case, I'm just going to add a controller. And we'll add a Web API to controller that's empty. And so we'll just add that. And it's going to ask me the name of that controller. And at this point, I need to point out that you'll notice it's highlighting the word default, and then afterwards it has the word controller. This is going to be the products controller, but I want to emphasize the fact that that word controller on the end is a convention, not a configuration, but a convention that identifies this as a controller. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Add, and that's going to go ahead and create the scaffolding for the controller. Now, at this point, the controller doesn't really have that much in there, and you don't really need to put the controllers in the folder named controllers. The folder name is just a convenient way to organize your source files, and of course, that's probably a good convention, again, to follow. So in this one, we're actually going to write the controller, and I will spend the time to actually write this controller because I want everybody to see and understand all of the different parts. First of all, we are going to have, as part of this controller, sort of our data backend, and I want to emphasize that this, of course, is not what you normally do, but this is what we are going to be doing. So in order to see all of this stuff, I need to actually go up here and put in our using, and in this case it's going to be my product app.models. Okay, as soon as I do that, you'll notice that this turned green down here, that recognized it all of a sudden, and we're going to call it products equal to a new product array. Let's do this, and we're going to initialize that array with some data, and we're going to say new product, and then we're going to initialize the product with an ID equal to 1, a name equal to tomato soup, and a category equal to groceries. Why not? And a price equal to 1. And when I hit this, it's going to sort of space it out there a little bit for me, just the end there. And I'll do a new product, and I'm going to create 3 of these, so you don't need to watch me type. Just okay, you'll notice also that I have here these kind of funny looking numbers. That certainly does not look like a number. 3.75M is actually for currency formatting, so this designates this as a currency value in the current whatever system you happen to be in. So it would be dollars for the US, or pounds for British, or whatever. Okay, so I've got my products now created. I'm also going to have another public IEnumerable. And in this case, it's going to be an enumeration of product that is going to just say get all products. Okay. And very simple, we'll just return products. And we'll have another one down here called public HTTP action result called a get product, and I do want that to be capitalized there, so let's do that. And in this case, I want to get it by an ID, so I'm just going to put an ID in there, and we'll just say var product equals products dot first or default. So if it's not in there, it'll give me the default value, which in this case is going to be null. And I'm going to hand in a p, and in this lambda expression, that's going to go to p.id is equal to my ID. That's the one that I want. And I don't believe that I need these. I know that in this particular case they give these, but I don't think you actually need those in there. So again, we're going to go if the product equals null, then we're actually going to return a not found error. Found. Now, how can I do this just by calling not found? I don't have that anywhere. That's because I'm inheriting from the API controller, and that's part of the API controller. So if we don't return a not found, then we can just return an OK with the product. Okay, and there we go. That's all there is to it. We've created a simple controller now that has all of the things that we need. We can either get all products, which is going to return a list of products, or here we have an HTTP action result that we're returning that includes either a not found or the products. So we're just keeping this simple. Products are stored in a fixed array inside a controller class. Of course, in a real application, you wouldn't do that. The controller defines these two things, an IEnumerable of product type, and also a get product, which gives us a product by ID. That's it. We have a working web API. Each method of the controller corresponds to one of these URLs. So in this particular one, I'm going to just put these in here in the comments, that this would correspond to the API / get. Well, we can just do it this way, products, okay? And how do I know that? Well, we'll get to that here in a moment. Let me do this other one first. This one is going to return the API, be in the area API. This is going to be my URI, my API / products / ID, so I should be able to just put that in there. If you are interested in finding out more information about Web API routes and HTTP requests to controller methods, then I would suggest you take a look at the routing in ASP.NET Web API link that is in the tutorial. And we should be able to go on from here. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. Routing is a really important topic, but suffice it to say that what we're talking about is how the web server is going to route any particular request to a particular controller. And in ASP.NET, the Web API, a controller is a class that handles those requests, and the public methods of the controller are called action methods or simply actions. And when a Web API framework receives a request, it routes the request to an action to determine which action to invoke. And how do I know which one of these it's going to actually invoke? The framework uses a routing table, and the Visual Studio project actually template for the Web API creates default routes, and the default routes look something like this. And I'll see if I can actually find it in here for you, but it's going to have a controller name. So the reason why, for instance, we have this being products right here is because our controller is products. Okay. Now it's lowercase, but that's all right. That's the convention. So the convention is to use the controller name for the routing. And you can read more about that in the routing section. Okay, I think that's enough said about that right now. So we have a convention that we can follow. That is, I can now run this, and we'll try that at this point. So let's go up here and hit the run. You'll notice that I don't use shortcut keys very much because I'm recording this, and sometimes those shortcut keys overlap. So I need to bring this in. This is Firefox running here, and you'll notice that it's given me an HTTP error 403.14 forbidden. That's because it's only given me this local IIS Express, and it hasn't done the API or the products. Okay, so once I do that, it actually does return me now an XML array of products that has the 3 products in it. Now, if I further go in here and do 1, then I get just the single one that I'm talking about, the tomato soup. Okay, so we have now a working project. That's kind of interesting. Let's go back and see if we can do a little bit more with it. So at this point, I am going to go back and add a new item. And I'm going to do this just in the products app. Okay, so I'm going to go add a new item. And in this particular case, the new item that I need to add is going to be for web, and it's going to be an HTML page. And this particular HTML page is just going to be called index. So let's do that, index.html. And in this particular case, I'm going to create a bunch of different stuff here. Now, I do want to throw this out here. I have a doc type HTML and HTML and a head, and I don't have anything in here like a title, so let me put in like a title here, and this will be our product app. And then under our body, we're going to have several things, like I'm going to have an H2, this is going to be all products, and then I'm just going to say UL ID equal to products, and it doesn't have anything in it at the moment. Alright, so let's put this inside of a div, and let's see. I wanted ID products, there we go. That'll make life a little better. And then we'll do a slash div. So I just hit Control-KD, which will reformat everything for me. And underneath this, I'm going to put another div. And inside that one, I'm going to put an H2. And inside that, we're going to say search by ID. And then I'm going to put an input and some type equal to text, and my ID is going to be product, just a prod ID, and we'll do a size equal to 5. That ought to be big enough. And here I'm going to do another input type, and this one is going to be a button, and its value is going to be search, and its on click method is going to be find. Okay, so we'll do that, and we'll figure that one out in a minute. And then I'm going to have a paragraph here with an ID equal to product. This is different than products, so that's good. And that's the end of that div. Now we do need to write the script, and I am going to be using Jquery, and so I'm just going to say my script is src equals, in this case, https //ajax aspnetcdn.com/ajax /jquery -2.0.3 min.js. Now, I suppose I could have done I'm pretty sure I could do that. Now, the script element allows others to include dynamic scripts and data. The element does not represent content for the user, blah, blah, blah. Data element must have a closing tag. Okay, so we'll put a closing tag on it. There we go. Now we're going to put another script in here, and this one is going to hold our functions that we need. So I'm going to have a var URI equal to, and this one is going to be an API /products. Okay? And I'm going to start using some jQuery here, document.ready function that we're going to define as follows. Okay, we have a $.get JSON URI. And then we're going to have a .done that is going to call this, oops, let's just do it this way, function on data. And for this one, we're going to do a $.each of our data. We have a function key item that is going to do a $, li, comma, text, colon, format, item, okay, dot append to, and where are we going to append this to? The $ products. Okay, hashtag there to indicate the ID, products, a semicolon, and don't forget your other semicolons. Now, let me kind of annotate this a little bit because I want to make sure that I haven't just totally lost you. This here is going to send an Ajax request. Okay? And where is it going to send this Ajax request? Well, to the URI, API/products. So fine, we'll do that. When it's done, we're attaching an anonymous function essentially here that has data in it. And for each data item in here, and this, again, I don't want to be too mysterious here. This is going to be on a success. The data then is going to contain a list of products. So it contains a list of products. And for each one of these things here, we're going to, like I said before, just add a list item for the product. And we're doing it to the products. Okay? So this is not a class on Ajax or Ajax calls or Jquery or anything like that. And if you have not played with Jquery before, I would hope that you have seen Jquery in your web programming class, but if you haven't, spend a little time maybe with it and get to know it a little better. Okay, so after this, you've got to finish this function here. We're going to have a couple of other functions also. Let's put a function in here called format item, which is going to take an item. And remember, this is JavaScript, so it really doesn't matter. It's not strongly typed in that sense. And we're just going to return item.name. Why? Because I know it has a name. And then we're going to return a colon $. Then, of course, plus the item.price. So just adding string concatenating those things together, and that's our function format item. And let's see why it thinks that's a problem. Not sure why it thinks it's a problem. Okay, you probably saw it before I did. I misspelled function. There we go. All right. So let's do another one here. This is going to be our find function, if I can spell function right. This is going to be find, and we'll say var id equals. Here we've got $, and we're going to be looking at our product ID. So we're going to find the product ID in the page here, and we're going to look at .value. Okay, so we're going to get the value of the product ID function for each one of these things, and we'll do .get JSON URI plus. Now I'm making another Ajax call. That would be an asynchronous call, but I'm now adding the ID. Okay, the ID of the product here. So if somebody wants to find something, we're going to go get that information. Where the product ID? Well, the product ID has to be in the search here. Okay, remember it's in our input field, and so we're getting that piece of information, and we're going to go out and call this web API call here. And when we get the result of that, obviously we're going to do a .done just like we did on our other one. This is going to be a function that takes takes data that is going to be returned by our function. Okay, and we'll put that in there, and we'll say, hey, $. Again, we're going to go and get something here, right? And this time we're going to get the ID of product dot text, and we're going to format an item of data. Okay, and we're also going to do a .fail. This is a little bit different. So if it doesn't go right, okay, then we're going to take a function that takes I don't know what that means, and I'm going to have to find that out here in just a second. And an error. Error is the way they have it. And again, we're going to put this in here as a $, but essentially, obviously, if there's an error, we're going to go in and put into the product location here in the page this .text error plus error. Okay, and we're good. We've got that function find set up. Now Jquery XHR. Let's see if we can figure out what that actually means. I'm going to do a quick search here. We'll see what we can come up with. Okay, so just in case you wanted to know what that was about, this is a Jquery Ajax call, which is given a URL, returns a JQXHR object. And let's see if I can find the actual description here of that really quick. And ways down the page, probably a little over halfway down the page, we find the JQXHR object returned by our Ajax call as of Jquery 1.5 implements the promise interface, giving them all the properties, methods, and behaviors of a promise. Okay, that would be a deferred object. For more info, you can look at that. These methods take one or more function arguments that are called when the Ajax call request terminates. This allows you to assign multiple callbacks on a single request, and even to assign callbacks after the request may have completed. If the request is already complete, the callback is fired immediately. So the available promise methods of the JQXHR object include done, fail, always, and then. So we're obviously using the done and the fail here at this point. So it's returning this JQXHR object. Now, how are we going to use that? this fail function actually requires it, so that's fine. We just need to send it in there. So if you look at the fail up here, and I didn't probably point that out when we were here, it requires this here. And then we have the text status and the error thrown. So here we have the text status and the error thrown. So these are just standard things that are passed in. This JQXR was actually something that is returned by this right here. And since it's returned by that, we can use it in the done and the fail connections there. Okay, so let's go back and just finish this thing up, which just means that I'm going to go down here and make this pretty because I can't stand things like that. Anyway, so in this case, there are several ways to get jQuery. In this example, I've used the Microsoft Ajax content delivery network. You can also download it from jquery.com. An ASP.NET Web API project template includes jQuery as well. Okay, so you might want to use that one, or if you have a specific place you want to get it from. In this particular case, I'm just using the one that we got there. So let's take a look at this now. To get a list of products, send an HTTP query request here, and we'll get these different things. Let's just run it. I think it'd be good enough to run the application at this point. So we'll set up IIS Express, and this will probably open up off page like it did before. The difference is that now I have a web page. And you'll notice it took a second for the actual products to show up. And that's because I'm running this on a development machine, and it just started IIS Express, so it took it a moment to actually fire off all of its, to get fired up, maybe I should say. So, if I want to search by a product, then I can search by a product. And when I click on search, eventually it should come up with a product. I say eventually. Well, it's always fun to see that there's an error in something when you're doing your own demo. In this particular case, you may have noticed, hopefully you did, that the function find here should have been lowercase. In particular, when I'm calling find, I'm calling this in lowercase, and if I don't get the case right, things are not going to work. And it isn't going to give me an error, and I can't really figure out what's going on unless I actually attach to Firefox and do that debug session with Firefox itself. So let me go ahead and fire this back up here again. The products show up here this time, and when I search for something this time, I get something right away. If I search for one, I should get that. It should search for whatever. And again, if I put something in there that doesn't exist, I should get an error not found. So we've got it working. We have a running application. A pretty simple application. And all we have to do is see what's going on. Now, I am going to go ahead and do something a little bit here in my browser. This is the new 3-pane mode that lets you see both the CSS rules and the layout tools. But you can see what's actually going on here, and I can look at the debugger, or I can see what's going on here. So if you want to play with that a little bit, you can play with that too. Okay, I don't usually use Edge myself. I do prefer Firefox because it doesn't really collect information about me, or I can tell it not to. And I would probably rather use Edge though than Chrome, which I know collects copious information about me. So I just wanted to show you this as well in Edge, because I hit F12 in Edge, and it's the same thing. By the way, I can do the same thing in both of these browsers, so I'm going to show you sort of what you can look at in both of these. So if I go over to Network Performance here, I can see some information about basically how long it sent and how long it was waiting before it was receiving data and stuff like that. And I can look at the domain. Wow, I would really like to make that bigger. That's kind of annoying that I can't actually do that. And the cause was an XHR, and I can get a text HTML type that it was getting. It took 7 milliseconds and so forth. Okay, and I can look at the headers if I want. I can look at the cookies. There were no cookies for this request, or the parameters, the response, the timings, even the stack trace that it was running Jquery. Basically you can see all of this information here, and this is in Firefox. Over here you get a little bit more interesting, I think, maybe a little better actually in some ways, layout of information. So here's my index HTML, and you'll notice over here, if I just mouse over that, I get a wait time of 8.49 milliseconds, which is still really fast, and 1.15 milliseconds downloading. So that's how long it took for me to actually get the information. And I have a Jquery call here, which took almost no time at all. And then I have a kind of a whatever this .min.map function call here that has waiting 28.7 milliseconds and downloading 37.54 milliseconds. So you can go back here and look at these, and if you want to try something new, you can put in a 3 there, and you'll see a new Jquery show up here. In this case 3. Now I've done it by names, but I suppose I could sort it by time here, in which case I'm going to do this in order. So this one here has my headers and everything else. I can look at the body if I want to. Here's my response, which is in JSON, and my parameters, cookies, timings, all of those other kind of stuff. So if I wanted to see all of those, I can. So they're basically the same. I think they look a little better actually in Edge, but I'm certainly not going to say to use one browser over another, because all of the browsers have pretty good debugging tools built into them at this point. Okay, so I think we're sort of done with this one. The next step, of course, is to work with Entity Framework, and we'll do that on our next one.